Hey everybody, it's Brock and we got a brand new episode of All About. Today we're going to be looking at the top aquaculture fish you can add to your saltwater aquarium. Now, what is an aquaculture fish? Aquacultured saltwater fish refers to a fish species that's farmed or raised in a controlled saltwater environment such as fish tanks or coastal ocean pens. These fish are cultivated for the saltwater industry rather than being caught in the wild. Aquaculture can help reduce the pressure on wild fish populations and provide a more sustainable source of catching fish for your home aquariums. Now, why should you choose a captive bred fish over a wild caught one? One of the most popular reasons is that a captive bred fish is going to be much hardier in the tank setting. This is simply due to them being raised in captivity, so they're used to being in the aquariums, so the transition from an aquaculture tank to the tanks at your home is very easy on the fish. They're also going to be a lot more disease resistant. In these controlled environments, it's very easy to catch things like parasites or diseases before they come to your display tank. Diet's also a big plus. Getting them to eat in the tank setting should be fairly easy, much easier compared to wild caught fish. Feeding flakes, pellets, and frozen cubes of shrimp are things they're going to be used to eating, while a wild caught fish is looking for that wild food. One that comes to mind is a wild caught lionfish. They're very stingy about wanting to only eat live foods when first introduced into the tank setting, causing the owner to find feeder shrimp or other smaller fish like chromis to feed the lionfish until they get adapted to eating from the skewer. Overfishing is a major concern in saltwater environments, and aquaculture just offers a way to meet demand without depleting those natural fish stocks. Let's jump into it. Our first aquaculture fish to choose is the one and only clownfish. There's many species to choose from, whether it's an ocellaris clownfish, clark eyes, maroons, Physinthus, skunks, tomatoes, you name it, they are now aquacultured. Even the ocellaris has a bunch of varieties like longfins, Wyoming whites, and mist bars. The great thing about clownfish is they really only need about a 15-gallon saltwater tank to flourish. Reason being is they don't produce a lot of waste and they tend to host an area of the tank, so they're not in need of a large area to swim around. They're priced fairly, only costing about $20 to $30 to get your basic colorations of clowns. They eat well, whether it's flakes, pellets, or frozen cubes, they will go after it. Clownfish tend to be a hardy fish that can survive mess-ups in the tanks for beginners still learning, and another fun thing is to see them host corals. The clownfish is known for hosting bubble anemones, philia, and even brain corals at times, which is just an awesome sight to see that symbiotic relationship right in your living room. Our second aquaculture fish to choose from is the yellow tang. This has been a newer, more widely available captive bred fish that a lot of people have been wanting since the bans were placed in Hawaii. Iota is one of the most successful groups that have captive bred the yellow tangs. The cheapest I saw them was around $165, and that was for a very small juvenile tank. They look great though. I've seen reports of them doing really well in the tank setting and getting big fast. They're still a tang, so you can't expect them to get up to 8 inches long in the tank setting, so make sure you have a large enough tank for them. Tangs need algae in their diet, so I'd recommend getting some hair algae growing in the tank for something natural they can eat, and also buy some dry seaweed that you can put on a clip in the tank for them to chew on throughout the day. They're going to eat meaty foods that you feed your other fish, but it's very important that you get them that algae because it keeps their health up, diseases away, and their colors are just going to be looking phenomenal. Our third aquaculture fish to choose from is the neon dottyback. Like their name, they have some standout colors. Striking orange body with the purple head and top fins, you'll notice this fish every time it comes out. They don't require a large tank, usually a 30-gallon will suffice. They go with pretty much any fish, but I do want to say this is a semi-aggressive to almost aggressive fish at times. The dottyback's personality is to stay close to the rock structure, usually poking their head out from the caves, finding new holes to hide in, and what ends up happening is they get very territorial over an area of the tank, and they're going to bully any peaceful fish that comes near it. So there is one downside to them, but it's going to be a very hardy fish. They only get to be about 4 inches, and they eat just about anything. They're reef compatible, and one thing I'd recommend is having glass lids on the tank because they do like to jump similar to a goby. Our fourth aquaculture fish to choose from is the emperor angelfish. This is an angelfish that looks super cool as a juvenile and gets even prettier as an adult. You almost can't recognize that they're the same fish. Now this is an angelfish that gets large, a whopping 15 inches long by adulthood. I'd recommend you place them in a very large tank. 200 gallons or more will give them plenty of room to swim in. They're very active, always out in the front, swimming through the caves, just a joy to watch. They're also ones that need a ton of algae in their diet. You can easily feed these angels multiple sheets of dry seaweed a day. They just eat that much. It works the same way with tangs. It's going to keep their health up, away from diseases, and keeps their colors shining. Angelfish do tend to become the kings and queens of the tank, so it can be difficult at times to add something new. Usually recommend feeding extra that day, turning the lights off, and maybe rearranging a rock or two can also help a ton adding that new fish. Our fifth aquaculture fish to choose from is the chalk bass. This is a great small fish, only grown to be about 3 inches long, and can have plenty of swimming room in a 30-gallon aquarium. They remind me of a little pit bull. They do have a bit of an attitude, but overall it's just for show. They'll eat just about anything you put into the tank. I'd recommend meaty food as they are carnivore. You can have multiple chalk bass in the tank too, but it's best if you can add them at the same time. They're going to be reef safe, but you sometimes can catch them going after small inverts like hermit crabs and sexy shrimp. It also has a really unique coloration. This silver blue body and some red stripes. I really dig it. It's something you don't see on a lot of different fish. They can be compatible with just about any other reef fish, so you should have no issues adding them to your tank. Our sixth aquacultured fish to choose from is the blue mandarin goby, or the spotted mandarin goby, or the green mandarins. All of these are going to have about the same kind of care guide. Probably one of the most striking colorations and patterns you're going to see on a reef-safe fish. They look like aliens, to be honest. Now, a lot of times people will classify these quickly as expert only, and the main reason is you have a few things that you need to make sure are right, but after that, they really aren't that hard to take care of, especially these new ones that are captive bred. First thing you need to do is have a seasoned tank. This shouldn't be the very first fish you add to your tank after a cycle for a month, so give it some time to go through its phases. And once you feel like the tank is old enough for them, that's when you really want to get one. The second thing you need are copepods, which is their main source of food until you get them to eat something else. In some cases, they only eat copepods. You can buy these in bottles from Algae Barn or Reef Nutrition. If you do not have a way to install a refugium to help the copepods reproduce, you can add bottles up to the tank regularly, or you can do what I used to do in my tanks that had hang on the back filters, is I would get some Chaeto and I would shove it behind one of the rocks in the corner of the tank and just pour those copepods right on top of the Chaeto in hopes that they would reproduce quickly enough that the mandarin would not eat them all over the course of a couple months. After that, the biggest thing is just keeping your levels on point. If a spike is to happen, a mandarin will most likely be your first fish to perish. They're going to be fragile. They are extremely peaceful, usually staying close to the live rock, looking for the copepods to eat. You can see them doing almost like this pecking at the rocks to grab them. I'd recommend putting them with other peaceful fish because they can perish if they are to get bullied. They're not going to be a fish that's going to defend itself. Our seventh aquaculture fish to choose from is the azure damselfish, or as we tend to call them, the Kupang damselfish. This is a small fish with a lot of color. Bright blue body with a yellow belly that runs all the way to their tail. Damsels come with a lot of attitude. If a fish cannot defend itself, the damsel will take advantage. Small gobies, chromis, other reef-safe fish can have trouble with the damsel bullying them, but tangs, clowns, angels, they won't put up with it, so usually they do better with some of those stronger willed fish. Multiple damsels can be in the tank together. They will somewhat school around the tank. They'll kind of tag each other, chase each other around, but they can be a bit of a demolition crew, spitting sand around, making burrows, even moving frags around the tank. They're like a toddler running around the fish tank. While it can be a headache at times, they're also one of the most hardy fish in the list. They survive the spikes. They do really well as the first fish that goes into the tank, and they're really easy to take care of for people that are new and still learning about the hobby. Our eighth aquaculture fish to choose from is the angelfish that won't get so big. It's a flameback angelfish. These are basically a dwarf angelfish. They only grow to be about 3 to 4 inches, so if you have a 40-gallon or more, that would give them plenty of room. An angelfish is going to thrive in a tank with a lot of live rock because they like to graze along the rock structure all day long. You're going to see them pecking at the rocks constantly. That is their way of looking for that algae. They get along with just about anyone too. I'd put them at semi-aggressive. You might see them charge a fish here and there, but never to the extent that you should have to move them out. Diet consists of meaty foods and algae. A great frozen cube you can get is spirulina that has sponge, algae, and some other nutritional things right in that cube for you. You can thaw those cubes out into a little Tupperware and then spoon feed it through them throughout the week. There are fish that's with caution in the reef tank. Main reason being is them nipping at your corals. It tends to be a 50-50 chance on if you get one that doesn't mess with it at all or one that does like to nip at corals. You can never really tell, but if you're absolutely wanting an angelfish in the reef tank, this is one of your best bets. Our 9th aquaculture fish to choose from is the orange spotted rabbitfish. Most prices I've seen are about $80 to get one. A rabbitfish has a large oval body and short top fins that actually house a powerful sting, so they are venomous. You can see them bounce these fins up rapidly as a way to deter predators. Rabbitfish always have a very eye-catching design. This one in particular has those bright orange polka dot pattern all over the top of them. They will get fairly large, most getting to be about 10 inches by adulthood. I'd recommend a larger tank once they hit adulthood. Around 120 gallons will give them plenty of room. Rabbitfish tend to be omnivores, so they will eat algae you put on the clip as well as meaty foods. I'd recommend it being the only rabbitfish you add to the tank unless you have a mated pair. They can be with peaceful to aggressive fish because they're poisonous fins. Most fish don't try to mess with them. They have a shy personality when first introduced into the tank. You might see them hiding behind the rocks for the first few days, but give them time, they will start to come out. I'd recommend leaving those power heads on whenever you're feeding, so that'll push some food back to where they're hiding. Our 10th aquaculture fish to choose from is the pajama cardinal fish. This is a great beginner fish for hobbyists that might not have a large tank at first. They do well in something as small as a 20-gallon aquarium. They're very docile. They aren't too big of a hit on the budget either, usually costing about 20 bucks. They have a very unique swimming ability where it's almost like they're just floating in the water column. And once they spot something they want, they'll quickly dart forward towards it. They can be kept in groups as they will school together, and some can even reproduce in the tank setting. So if it is to happen, you can actually catch the male carrying the eggs in their mouth. That's pretty cool. They get along with any other peaceful reef fish. You really shouldn't see much aggression from them except chasing their own kind. Our 11th aquaculture fish to choose from is the splendid dottyback. This is one of my favorite beginner fish because of its personality and its coloration. They have a yellow tail with these blue highlights running down its body, plus this black hexagon pattern. If you look really up close, the dottybacks are going to stay close to the rock structure and find some tight spaces to swim through, so it's really fun to watch them swim through the tank. They're a carnivore, so make sure you have plenty of meaty foods in their diet. And also keep a glass lid for these. They will jump, especially when first introduced into the tank. I'd recommend only picking one dottyback for the aquarium unless it was fairly large, because dottybacks tend to show a lot of aggression towards each other. Our 12th aquaculture fish to choose from is the striped blenny, another venomous fish on the list. Their bite can have a powerful sting. They are not going to use these fangs to actually attack prey, so you shouldn't really be worried about getting your hands into the tank. They're more of a defense mechanism. If it's their last resort to get away from a predator, they'll use those fangs. They only grow to be about 4 inches by adulthood, so a 30-gallon aquarium would be great. They are carnivores that need a meaty diet. I have seen at times they will go after inverts if hungry, so if you do see some hermit crabs or smaller shrimp disappear, it could be this blenny. They're very quick swimmers that like a lot of live rock to swim through. They can wedge themselves into really small places, so if you're not seeing them, I wouldn't move the rock structure around to find them. This is going to just cause more stress to them. Just continue feeding, leave those power heads on so it's blowing the food around, and eventually they'll come out and realize, hey, it's time to eat. Our 13th aquaculture fish to choose from is the seahorse. Now this does require a lot of specific things from the beginning of setting up the tank, but I wanted to include it because it's just awesome to know that even seahorses are available to purchase captive bred. A seahorse does well in its taller tank with low flow, tall plants like sea fans to grab on and drift around the tank, and then jumping off of one and grabbing on some macroalgae and jumping to another. Seahorses tend to do well by themselves with other seahorses, or with other very peaceful fish that drift very slowly through the water, kind of like a cardinal. They are also copepod eaters only, so without a refugium, you'll need to do the trick I talked about earlier, or feed bottles of copepods often. I have seen in some very small cases where their seahorses were eating things like mysis shrimp, but in most cases, those copepods are what they're going after. I have an in-depth video you can watch after this one that tells you all about those seahorses. Our 14th aquaculture fish to choose from is the Watchman goby. I had a yellow Watchman goby for the longest time, and they are an absolute character. They remind me of a frog or grumpy. Gobies stay sitting on the sand and will dig burrows and holes to hide in. They can even form a symbiotic relationship with a shrimp, so they'll go out and look for food for them, bring it back to them, and that shrimp will stay near the burrow and protect it. These gobies are territorial over their cave, so you might see them charge a fish that gets near it, but never to the point that you need to be worried. I'd recommend getting some sinking pellets, as they are pretty shy to eat at first, and the pellets you can sink down there by their cave to entice them to eat. I'd recommend only having one Watchman goby in the tank, as they are very aggressive towards their own kind. They do well in small tanks, only needing 15 gallons or more, and they usually cost around $20, so not too bad on the bank. Our 15th aquaculture fish to choose from is the purple tang. What a beauty this fish is. If you're from Louisiana, everyone refers to this one as the LSU fish. These tangs can be very aggressive, so I would add them last if at all possible. Make sure you got plenty of algae on hand because they will tear it up. If you're wanting to add multiple tangs in the tank at one time, I'd recommend trying to add them at the same time. It helps with aggression and their territorialness. Once they go in there all together, they kind of fight for their own territory, and then they're okay. The tang becomes very territorial over the tank, every square inch of it. So you might run into some aggression when adding new fish, but do those tricks like I said, move some rocks around, feed them a little bit more, turn the lights off, it'll help. They do really well in reef tanks, as they will be your own personal lawnmower to take care of that algae that grows on the rock and around your corals. With them being captive bred, it's also going to give you a better chance that ick will stay away, but I would still try to check and see if your local fish store has dipped them when they came in, or if they're housing them in copper. For us, we always kept copper in the tanks that the fish were in. That way it was killing off anything that might have been on them. That can just save you a major headache before adding them into the display tank and they end up catching something or giving it to another fish. Our 16th aquaculture fish to choose from is the court jester goby. These are definitely the smallest fish in the list to maybe grow 3 inches by adulthood. They usually don't cost more than $30 to get one. This is a very timid, very peaceful fish you can add to your tank. They have these bright red stripes that run horizontally along their bodies. It's sure to catch your eye. In a large enough tank, you can house more than one, but in most cases, it is best to just have one court jester in the tank. They are omnivores, so while they will eat pellets, flakes, you might even catch them picking at some algae. Best case scenario is to house them with other peaceful reef fish, and they'll do great. Our 17th aquaculture fish to choose from is the seal's cardinal fish. While I don't have a video specifically for this species, they are really closely related and look-wise to the flame cardinals. This is actually a nocturnal fish in the wild that likes to swim out in the open and also within the caves. So even though they are nocturnal, they will adapt to your lighting schedule and begin coming out when it's feeding time. It's a very peaceful fish that has some floating like swimming that the pajama cardinal does. Their colors are also really unique. Lots of lime greens and blues in them. Real dominant stripes that run down their body. Just a cool one to add to your list. Our 18th aquaculture fish to choose from is the Royal Grama basslet. Royal Gramas were probably one of the most popular fish to sell at the fish store that I worked at. They are so hardy. They like to be out in the front of the tank, and you just can't get colors like this on a lot of fish. A very deep purple and some yellow that splits them right in half. Royal Gramas can be found schooling together in the tank. They are a basslet, so they do, once they get accustomed, they'll stick close to the rock structure, being territorial over areas they like. That's all their personality. You can even sometimes catch them digging burrows to make their home just the way they want. Usually not too bad on the bank either, and they won't get too big, usually only growing to be 4 inches at most by adulthood. Our 19th aquaculture fish to choose from is the Regal tang. By far one of the most popular tangs in the world. Everybody knows dory, and it's nice to know that you can have a dory in your home without actually harming the wild dories in the ocean. These tangs are very small when available, sometimes only being 1 to 2 inches, but boy are they active. This tang has a ton of energy and has some speed too. They will zip in and out of the rock structure you create for them, and that deep blue color is beautiful and really hard to find on fish. You need a big tank though. While they come small, they grow very quickly. I'd recommend a 180 at minimum to give them plenty of room to grow and spend all that energy. They are still pretty expensive. They'll cost over $100 to get one for one that is a juvenile, but they are an absolute joy to have in the tank. Lots of algae eaten. They will come after meaty food, but again, make sure it's a tank, so you want to make sure they're eating that algae all throughout the day. Regals can also be paired up or in groups. They can school around, but just realize if you let them to get full size, which is well over 10 inches, you got some big fish in the tank, so you want to make sure you have plenty of room if you want more than one. And our 20th aquaculture fish to choose from is the Aptasia eating filefish. This fish does not look like any of the others, and they don't eat like any of the others. The filefish is a great fish to add if you're having problems with pests like Aptasias or worms that are growing on the rocks. You can get them to eat other things like frozen cubes of shrimp, but it doesn't always work. A majority of the ones I took care of, we were constantly having to find Aptasias around the shop for them to eat because they just did not care for eating anything else. They grow to be about 5 inches long by adulthood. They're somewhat shy fish that's going to stick to the rock structure. A lot of times you might not even notice them because of how well they camouflage themselves with the rocks. They've also been known to nip at LPS and SPS corals, so I'd be cautious about adding one to your reef unless you just absolutely needed to get rid of some Aptasias. He'll go after them, and then maybe you can catch them and move them somewhere else. Just a really cool one, a unique one you could add to your list, but a very cool filefish. And that will do it for today's episode of the top aquaculture fish for your saltwater aquarium. While the list gathered 20 different fish from a variety of different species like clowns, tangs, angels, gobies, and more, there's still another 100 we could talk about. Be sure to look within each group we talked about because there's a ton of different clowns you can pick from, more types of gobies, other blennies that might have a coloration that you like, and they're all aquacultured, which is just awesome and a great sustainability for our oceans. I see a lot of people out there that really want to have only fish in their tank that are part of a sustainable practice. So I hope this video gave you some ideas of what you can add to your aquarium, and you can go out and do some shopping now. Thanks everybody for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, stay safe, be kind, and I'll see y'all later.